Well, I've organised what I call Neighbourhood Birdwatch, which is really about showing people what birds there are in their neighbourhood. And most of the people who've come along here today have been local, and they just live nearby. Some of them know the park very well, and some of them are strangers to the park. But what we've been doing is we've just been walking about, seeing what birds there are, listening to all the calls. You'll actually hear a lot more birds than you would see. And particularly today when it's been a little bit windy, the birds are lying low. But you know, when the wind drops a bit, the birds are all singing away and it's lovely.
Well, I went for a walk in the park, I think it was Saturday, and happened to just saw the notice by the gate in Park Road. And my mum had always been interested in birds. That started me off. She seemed to know much more than I know now, even many years later. And I thought it would be a good opportunity because you don't often see them. It would be nice to try and identify them by the songs.
I mean, the parks in Belfast are pretty amazing. Like we're in Ormo Park, which is like an old mature woodland. Like a lot of the trees are very old oak trees, and they're beautiful shape and beautiful. You know, they're all just coming out into leaf now. But they provide a huge amount of food resource for a lot of birds and nesting sites. I mean, we're just looking at this oak tree in front of us, and there's a blue tit going in and out of it, and that's really nice to see. I mean, they're feeding their young, and the birds are quite happy. Plenty of caterpillars in the trees to feed on. So an area like this with lots of good mature trees is just what a lot of birds need. And the parks also have a nice variety of different habitats. I suppose you've got the trees, and then you've got some open grassland areas, and you've also got streets and houses and all around surrounding the park, and that's where a lot of birds like starlings will be nesting and then coming into the park to feed.
Why do you believe it's important for yourself to learn about birds?
I spend a lot of time around children and friends that haven't, and the question often comes up, what is it? You know, simply that. It's just a general interest that I've always had but never done very much about.
Some very important environmental groups have had their funding cut. Do you think this will have an effect on the environment and in turn birds?
I definitely do, because a lot of the environmental groups are actually doing the sort of work that you'd expect the government to do. So the government has been paying core funding to a lot of these environmental groups to do work in place of the government. So I don't know what's going to happen now, because this is all essential work that they're doing, and if their funding is cut, that work's just not going to get done. It's going to have to fall back onto the government, who just don't have the resources to do it. So it's a pretty difficult situation. So also there are a lot of amateur people who, particularly bird watchers, who contribute an awful lot to sort of the greater sort of scientific knowledge. Now they do all that work voluntarily, and I think that'll still continue, but it's a bit difficult if the government is totally reliant on volunteer people to do a lot of the work for them.
Do you believe birds bring vitality to cityscapes?
Without a doubt. I mean, when we think of the starlings that have been flying over the waterfront hall and that area, and then in our own garden we've had goldfinches, which the first time I saw them I thought had escaped from a zoo. They were so bright and colourful, and the more you look, the more you get out of it. It really does add a bit of an extra dimension to the joy of living.
I would like to think they go away and they've actually learned something. They've learned something about birds. Like some of the people who have come along have been absolute beginners, and they're just interested in birds, but interested in learning something. So at the very least, they've maybe gone away and learnt some of the basic songs, like the blackbird and the robin. But then also I've been able to point out to them some of the birds that maybe they never even were aware of, like tree creepers, which climb up the trees, and they're nice little brown birds that are quite interesting to see, and goldcrests and things like that. And maybe sometimes you might see a jay or a sparrowhawk. So they'll see birds that maybe they've never even heard about. Well, these bird watching walks go on through until I think it's the 2nd of June, and they're advertised on the Belfast City Council's website, and they're also advertised on my own website, which is called forageIreland.com, and they're also pinned up on the gates of the park here and also on the other venues, because we're going to go to Cherryvale Park next, and then to Lagan Lands East, which is near Annandale, and Lagan Meadows. So there's a few more walks to go. In general terms, the Royal Society for the Protection of Birds and the Ulster Wildlife and the WWT in Castle Espy, I mean, they all organise bird walks of some description or things like that, or nature walks, and there's plenty of stuff going on out there. You just really have to keep an eye on the websites and see what's been offered. But there is plenty going on.